NBC News also reported yesterday that the Trump administration has launched what they are calling Operation at Large. And the plan pulls in 1,800 agents from Homeland Security's investigations unit, 2,000 employees from the FBI, the U.S. Marshal Service, and the DEA, and 250 IRS agents. So thousands of people just reassigned, taken off their normal jobs, and tasked simply with rounding up immigrants to meet Stephen Miller's objectives. And all of those resources being put into immigration means there are less resources for everything else. Federal prosecutors told NBC News that cases without immigration components have been stalled or are moving more slowly. At least one U.S. attorney's office abandoned a potential federal prosecution against someone prosecutors felt was dangerous because the case lacked an immigration component. And last week, ProPublica reported that because the Trump administration wants to focus so much on immigration, they are leaving the fight against extremist violence to the states. As Michigan Attorney General Dana Nessel put it, the federal government used to prioritize domestic terrorism, and now it's like domestic terrorism just went away overnight. It certainly did not. To show you how much the Trump administration cares about keeping the country safe, check out who they just appointed to lead the Department of Homeland Security's, one of their hubs for terrorism prevention. This guy. This is 22-year-old Thomas Fugate, who literally graduated from college last year. And according to his LinkedIn, the bulk of his leadership experience comes from his participation in a club that simulates the United Nations. I am not kidding. Nothing wrong with those clubs, but you're not ready to be in charge of a counterterrorism hub a year later. But pivotally, no threat prevention experience is listed in his employment history. So what exactly made Mr. Fugate right for the role? As ProPublica put it in a new piece, Fugate brings a different qualification prized by the White House: loyalty to the president. On Instagram, Mr. Fugate traced his political awakening to 2016, which, by the way, he was 13 years old, where he said, quote, "In a generation deprived of hope, opportunity, and happiness, I saw in one man the capacity for real and lasting change, Donald Trump." Now, just last year, Mr. Fugate spent some time down in Florida celebrating Trump's 78th birthday as part of a fan group called Club 47. People inside DHS said that Mr. Fugate was hired less to run the agency and more as a minder or a babysitter, saying, quote, "The White House installed Fugate to oversee a pivot away from traditional counterterrorism lanes and to steer resources toward MAGA-friendly sheriffs and border security projects before eventually shuttering operations." The office's mission has changed overnight, with a pivot away from focusing on domestic extremism, especially far-right movements. The terrorism category that framed the agency's work for years was abruptly expanded to include drug cartels, part of what DHS staffers call an overarching message that border security is the only mission that matters. Meanwhile, we as a country have seen plenty of actual extremist violence recently. I mean, an arson attack on the governor of Pennsylvania's home, a mass shooting at Florida State University, a car bombing at a fertility clinic in California, 2 Israeli embassy aides shot dead outside a Jewish museum in Washington, a firebombing attack in Colorado. All of that happened in just the last 2 months. And now, the guy in charge of one of the offices tasked with preventing extremist violence like that is this 22-year-old. Before he got the position, the previous director was Bill Braniff, an Army veteran with more than 2 decades of national security experience. He resigned long before this, earlier this year, when the Trump administration started gutting the office. And he joins me now. Bill Braniff, thank you so much for being here with me tonight. I think it's so important for people to understand all of the different factions of government, all the things they do. So let me just start by asking you about this office and what exactly the team you used to run is responsible for and how they work with communities.
So I used to be the director of the Center for Prevention Programs and Partnerships, and the key word there is partnerships.
Yeah.
My office partnered with state government officials, local government officials, public health officials, mental health professionals, schools, the law enforcement community, to make sure that we are creating upstream prevention programs. These are programs that can do a non-criminal justice intervention if someone is gravitating towards violence, the way we might do a non-criminal justice intervention if someone was gravitating towards suicide. And these programs had amazing promise. We really demonstrated proof of concept, and I think Americans would be really proud of the work that this very multidisciplinary team was doing in partnership with our local partners.
It's so important for people to understand. I mean, even working in government for myself, I didn't do this, obviously, that prevention and working with local communities is such a pivotal part of what the federal government does around the country. You came to the job with 2 decades of national security experience, which I think was applied in a range of ways. You're working in preventing all sorts of different kinds of violence. How was that applied, and why is having that experience important? Obviously, they've taken a different approach with your successor of sorts.
Sure. I tried on a whole bunch of different roles for size over the years. I served in the Army. I worked in nuclear counterterrorism. I went to grad school. I spent 5 years training the FBI, the CIA, the Special Operations Community, the State Department, and local law enforcement on counterterrorism issues. And along the way, I realized that traditional counterterrorism, while essential, is insufficient, that we needed something else besides responding to already mobilizing violent actors. We needed to figure out how to decrease the number of people who ever got to that point where they wanted to engage in violence. And I started to look around at other professional disciplines. It turns out that our public health community, for over 3 decades, has been taking evidence-based approaches to other forms of violence prevention, whether that's suicide or intimate partner violence prevention, violence against children. And I just said, well, what if we pick up what we've learned from other forms of violence prevention and put it down on this very exotic form of violence that we've said was Homeland Security business, national security business. And it turns out humans are humans and violence is violence. And a lot of those programs really work. So I actually had to do this for 15 years and realize it wasn't working to look at another group of professionals to find out what does work.
Experience really matters. You left back in March. That must have been a really hard decision to make at the time. It's a kind of, you've been working and thinking about how to do this effectively for some time. What was that decision like? And are you still in touch with people who are still working in the program now?
Almost every day, I'm in touch with my colleagues. It was a dream job. It was a brutally difficult job. Initially, we had to change a culture to adopt this public health informed approach. We had to do a lot of internalizing and professional development as a team. But leaving that organization was gutting for me. We had something really special going, and the traction we were getting across the country with our partners was remarkable. But 8 of my probationary employees were fired wrongfully. They had received an email saying that their performance was lacking, and I can assure you their performance was not lacking. They were extraordinary.
8 of them? 8
over a weekend. And I was also notified that I would not be renewed at the end of my first 2-year tenure. So I knew I was a lame duck. I could sit on my hands for 8 weeks or 6 weeks and hope no one else got fired, or I could resign and protest to tell my 8 probationary employees that they mattered, that their service matters, that they were not people I would, say we should be discarding in that way. And then I went to work at American University. There's a research lab there that really leads the field in this prevention space, and we are working to recreate this government capability outside of government.
Bill Braniff, thank you so much. I've been wanting to talk to you since I read about you in ProPublica over a week ago. I hope you'll come back and talk to us about that and violence prevention. And I think this is an area people should really keep their eye on. So thank you again.
I would love to. Americans should know that violence is preventable and we can help them prevent it.
Thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.